We're lowering prices a lot. Look at what's happening. They're dropping quite a bit. And after we finish defeating Iran, which is being severely defeated, soon I will declare the Strait of Hormuz as United States territory. Basically, that's what we have the blockade for.
Trump made a controversial statement in recent days in a speech to an audience of uniformed police officers and firefighters. He said that soon he will declare the Strait of Hormuz as United States territory. Was that just bluster? In this video, I'm going to show something that the United States has been doing secretly, which shows that they are just bluffing. Let's get straight to the point. 4 days before saying he would declare the American Strait, Trump had already presented the shorter version of this same idea. Sitting at the Oval Office desk, surrounded by photographers, a reporter asked directly, "What is your assessment of the Strait of Hormuz?" He replied that there is only one force capable of controlling the Strait of Hormuz. The United States called the American blockade a steel wall. Infallible.
The only force that has control of the Strait of Hormuz at this moment is the United States Navy.
We have a blockade that has been infallible. It's a wall of steel.
They've even swept the entire strait for mines. And this is where the reason behind the bravado comes in. According to the news site Axios, there has been a maritime corridor in Hormuz operating for weeks, almost in secret. It's located south of the strait, near the coast of Oman. Between 15 and 20 oil tankers pass through there every night, protected by U.S. Air Force fighter jets. A task force commanded from Fort Bragg sets up every day, together with Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, the list of which ships can pass, and separates them into time slots, some for entry, others for exit. According to Axios, the result of this is about 10 million barrels per Dalton Y returning to the market. Half of what was coming out before the war. On some nights, the peak reaches 20 million. Now, pay attention to this detail because it explains a lot. This corridor, or channel, as some outlets call it, didn't just appear out of nowhere this week. It has an origin. In June, the United States and Iran came close to an interim agreement to reopen Hormuz. But it fell through because of something very specific. Iran wanted the ships to go through the northern route under Iranian control, where it could decide who passes and charge for it. The United States wanted to protect an alternative route along the coast of Oman. The agreement fell through, largely because of this route dispute. And this dispute didn't disappear. It actually became the very corridor that exists today. And it's not the first time this kind of maneuver has happened there. An investigation by Reuters back in June had already caught the U.S. Army supervising dozens of secret ship-to-ship oil transfers using aerial drones, marine drone, and helicopter near Fujairah and the port of Sohar in Oman. At least 116 ships had participated in this up to that point, and there's a detail that's quite curious. This technique of transferring cargo in secret and turning off the ship's transponder to disappear from the radar is the same one that Iran itself has been using for years to evade sanctions. In other words, the United States took the opponent's playbook and used it against him. And you can see the result of this corridor on a map without needing any complicated statistics. Maritime tracking data shows ships piling up at the anchorages of Fujairah and off the coast of Dubai, waiting for their turn to cross. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Middle East, at Bab el-Mandab, traffic spikes there. More than 40 ships crossing Dalton on some days. Here in Hormuz, just over 10, the difference is striking. But this map only shows who has their transponder on. And the convoy, as you've already seen, moves with it turned off. So the 10 that show up are just the tip. What's really passing through is what Axios reported. And what the map shows is exactly the effect of that. The line is for those who are waiting for their turn. And this line doesn't move on its own. Someone decides who gets out of it, because the corridor isn't just an escort, it's also a blockade. The ones who decide who goes through and who stays are the Americans. Listen to this recording. It's the radio recording released by CENTCOM, the United States Central Command.
Captain, we request that you change your course to 190. If you do not comply, we will force you to obey the order.
This is an American warship speaking.
At this time.
On the other end of the line, a merchant ship trying to reach an Iranian port. Can you hear it? The voice asking the captain to change course
We will monitor your course.
and warning that if he doesn't comply, they will use force against him. That's how the corridor works. It's not through diplomacy. It's done through orders, backed by the threat of force. And according to the American command itself, this is not an isolated case. Dozens of ships have already been redirected. Some have been disabled, others boarded. In other words, oil from the Gulf can get out. A ship bound for Iran cannot enter. That's basically what Trump said in that same answer. It's open for others, not for them. And for you to get a sense of how big this is, look at what's at stake. The Strait of Hormuz accounts for about 20% of all the oil and gas flowing around the world. When the war started, the Carlyle Group, one of the largest asset managers in the world, estimated that a shock of this size could take between 5 and 10 million barrels per Dalton off the market. Something comparable to the oil crisis of the 70s. Well, that's exactly the amount the corridor is putting back on the market now, every night, without anyone noticing. It's still not the normal volume, but it's the difference between a crisis and a collapse. Now the question arises, how do you get 20 oil tankers through every night right under the Revolutionary Guard's nose? And the answer is not at sea. It's in the air. CENTCOM ran a 2-week campaign. Not against the Iranian fleet, against its eyes, targeted coastal radars, maritime surveillance systems. Everything Iran used to see the Strait. According to the American officials who spoke to Axios, today Iran sees the southern channel with very few radars it managed to rebuild. And with observers in speedboats, watching with the naked eye. And that explains something that the maritime monitoring data shows. A good part of the recent attacks on ships happened precisely on the southern route, the same route as the corridor. From what the officials describe, Iran knows the route the convoy takes. What it no longer knows is when or exactly where. So it fires blindly into that area, and the American fighter jet is there precisely to intercept what it launches. One of the officials said that they have already shot down 8 drones and 2 Iranian cruise missiles in this operation. And one of them summed up for Axios in one sentence what's happening. We've been controlling the southern channel for 2 months. The Revolutionary Guard can cause trouble, but they don't control the Strait. We're the ones in control.
We control the Strait 100%. Now, can they cause problems? Yes, they can cause problems, but they're broke, they don't have money. You know, Iran is broke, completely broke.
Now let's go back to that statement from the Oval Office. He called the blockade a steel wall. He said it was infallible, that control was 100%. With this new route running every night, Trump's statement isn't just bravado. He's saying in public what the operations teams say off camera. And 4 days later, he raised the stakes, saying that the Strait is American territory. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which for years threatened to close this strait, now looks at it and can't even see who's passing through. And on the other side, what does Iran have to offer? Well, a list of demands. Iran's chief negotiator said the country won't give in until the United States meets all of its demands. Among them are compensation for the war, lifting the blockade on the ports, withdrawal of forces from the region, ending sanctions, and returning frozen assets. Now, stop and think about what this list reveals. A country that's winning the war doesn't ask for compensation. It doesn't ask for the frozen assets back. The one who asks for that is the one who's counting coins. And it's not me who's saying that. Trump himself said in that Oval Office speech that inflation in Iran would be close to 300%. And the Treasury, which enforces the sanctions, uses an even harsher expression. An economy in freefall. In practice, Iran sits at the negotiating table with a huge list and empty pockets. Iran even tried to make money with the Strait itself. It created its own authority that charges, according to the US Treasury, the equivalent of a toll of up to $2 million per second hip to pass through the routes it considers legitimate. And look at how the Americans responded to that. First, by targeting the money. The American Treasury called the toll extortion and went after the ships that support the scheme. There are more than 100 vessels in the so-called Shadow Fleet. That network of disguised oil tankers that Iran uses to sell oil secretly that have already been placed on the sanctions list. And then the toughest response, which didn't even need an announcement, the corridor. Because what Iran was charging for was passage. And the passage, now it's the United States doing the selling. In practice, Iran was stuck with the toll and no customers. And there's one more detail that shows just how seriously the American government is taking this. Look, the corridor runs right along the coast of Oman. Oman is an ally of the United States. And at the same time, it's the country that's mediating with Iran. Well, on the 17th, Trump warned that he might attack Oman if the country interferes with efforts in the Strait. It's a tough message for an ally, but it shows one thing. For the United States, this corridor is not up for discussion with anyone, not even with those who help. And there's more. On the 19th, the day Axios revealed the corridor, Trump spoke twice about Iran. And both statements together show that the corridor is just one part of the plan. The first was in the afternoon at the White House podium. He said that the Strait of Hormuz will no longer be as important as it used to be. The reason? The United States is building pipelines in record numbers and finding other sources of oil within the country itself. In other words, he's saying that in a few years, they won't even need to go through there. The second one was just over an hour later on his social network, Truth Social. Take a look at his post. He announced what he called the Economic D-Day. The message is simple. Any country, any bank, any company in the world that helps Iran in any way will face consequences. Oil smuggling, money transfers, shell companies, everything.
Now, let's put the pieces of this puzzle together.
First, the corridor, which takes oil out of the Gulf currently every night. Second, the sanctions that cut off Iran's funding in the meantime. And finally, the pipelines that, if they come off the drawing board, take away Iran's power to threaten the world with this strait. One thing for now, one for the medium term, one for the future.
What becomes clear is that they have a plan, and it was with that plan in motion that Trump went there and spoke on American soil.
Whether it's just bravado or not, the fact is that the hardest part is already being done. What hasn't been decided yet is how much longer Iran will be able to hold out.
According to Axios, the corridor has already restored half of the oil flow that used to pass through there before the war. The other half will only return when Iran gives up or when it runs out of money to continue. If you enjoyed seeing this part of the war that the mainstream media doesn't cover, leave a like and subscribe, because this story will still have new chapters. See you in the next video.